Okay, for math we've been learning about shapes, and some of you mentioned that, you know a lot about shapes, but some of these shapes that your worksheets are talking about are maybe not shapes that you're that familiar with. So I'm glad to say that today's homework is more practice composing shapes. It's helping you think about what pieces go together to make a shape, about this, how many sides are there, how many points are there, corners are there. And we're also going to look today at how you can use other shapes together to compose a new shape, to draw a new shape. So let's look at some of the ones that you're asked to compose on your worksheet, which is page 265 to 266. Number one, and they've given you the dots again, okay? Number one says, draw an identical square beside the given square. So they have drawn one, and then you're gonna draw one to match it. I made some to show you guys out of colored paper, because I thought that might be a fun way for us to see how this works, okay? So here we have one square, and they're saying, put an identical square next to that given square. Okay, so I put this one here, and I'm going to put one right next to it, and I just cut these out of paper. You'll be drawing them, but I thought if we look at them on colored paper, it might be a fun way to see how is this going together. When you put this, you started with a square and you put another square next to it, you make a rectangle. Okay? Now that one you may be familiar with. How about this shape? This is called a trapezoid, okay? This is not one of the more familiar shapes, right? That you could just, if I said draw a trapezoid, you might find that tricky to just do off the top of your head. But this is a trapezoid, and it says, draw an upside down trapezoid below the given trapezoid. So here, we'll put one. Here's a trapezoid, and you're going to put an upside down trapezoid below. Okay, so that means you're not going to do it, you're not going to set it in exactly the same way or draw it. You're not going to do this. That won't make the shape you need. They want you to turn it upside down. Okay, so like match up the two long sides, and we have a new shape. What shape did we make? What shape did we make? This is number 2. We made a hexagon. Hexagon, number 2. So this made a rectangle, and this made a hexagon. All right? So I think that's interesting to consider how you can use other shapes to make new shapes. You're composing a new shape. Okay? Number 3 says, draw a triangle above a trapezoid. So we're going to use one of our other trapezoids, but we'll use this triangle, I think. Okay, so draw a triangle. Oh, my trapezoid's trying to escape. Draw a triangle above a trapezoid. So we'll stick our trapezoid here, and we'll draw a triangle above the trapezoid to top it. And what did we make? We made a triangle. Okay, this is another way to compose a triangle. Triangle. Aren't shapes fun? Isn't it interesting how they all work together? And when you start thinking about shapes, you know, you're going to start seeing them other places, right? One thing I think you're really going to enjoy on this worksheet is they're going to ask you to use shapes to draw something new. Now, I thought you would also enjoy this next one, because several of you said you had a hard time just drawing a pentagon. You weren't sure what it was. Well, here they give you some advice. They say, draw a triangle above a square. Okay, so let's take our triangle that we used up here, or our square that we used up here. Put the square, put a triangle on top, and you have a pentagon. So next time you're asked to draw a pentagon, and if you feel confused, like, I can't remember what that is or how to draw it, maybe you can remember square topped with a triangle. Pentagon. This is the shape of a building, an important building in America that's actually been called a pentagon, with straight sides and a pointy top. Okay? So the first part of the page just gives you different ways to compose shapes. It gives you advice of how to do it or how to put other shapes together to make a new shape. Now, you have a few fun questions where it says, use shapes to draw a robot. Okay, so you're going to think about what shapes would I use to make a robot, a simple robot. Okay, use shapes to draw a train. Use shapes to draw a house. Okay, so you're going to think about that and you're getting to choose the shapes. Okay, so everyone's drawings won't look exactly the same, but when I look at your work, I want to see that you were thinking about shapes coming together to make a new picture. Okay, I look forward to seeing what you come up with. So we're working on just becoming more familiar with shapes and realizing there's more to it than just, maybe when you first heard we were talking about shapes, it's just like, oh, circles, squares, triangles, whatever, I already know. But it's more complex, and it's really fun to play with them, to take them apart and put them together, to compose new shapes, and to think about how can we use shapes to make pictures. Okay, so I look forward to seeing your work on your math, page 265 to 266. Oh, hello. I'm just doing my sustained silent reading. I picked this book today. I love this book. We've looked at this book together in class, I think. I know we've looked at lots of Dr. Seuss books because we enjoy them. We enjoy their rhymes. This is the book that I read today for my sustained silent reading, okay? So in my reading journal, I can write down the number of minutes. Now, this book has a surprising number of pages. It took me 10 minutes to read it, okay? This book is by Dr. Seuss. Okay, so I'm going to write a few sentences about it. This book is by Dr. Seuss. It is a funny book of rhymes. And now, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to draw a picture of one of my favorite moments in the book because that helps me remember what I read. If some of you have read this book, I wonder if you'll recognize this moment. This is The Wet Pet. I love this page in the book. I think the rhymes are fun. It's a little pet whose head looks like an umbrella. Who is this pet? Say he is wet. You never yet met a pet, I bet, as wet as they let this wet pet get. Okay, that's probably my favorite page and rhyme in this book. So I drew a little picture in my reading journal. And this helps me think about what I read, wrote a few sentences. Oh, and they both have end marks and capital letters so that I can remember what I read and how many minutes. And then a picture to help me remember. A reading journal is so great. It's something you can keep all summer long. Make time to read every day and record what you read, whether that's in words or pictures. And this can really help you build this skill. And the more you read, and the better you get at it, the more enjoyment you have from it. I know that it's something you have to work hard at, and sometimes when you're working hard, you might be hard to remember that. The harder you work at it, the more fun you will actually have doing it. So I appreciate how you've all been working on your sustained silent reading and keeping your reading journal. I want to encourage you to keep on doing that as we're getting to the end of school, and even keep your sustained silent reading journal over the summer. Or you can also keep a reading journal entry of a book that someone in your family read to you, or that, read aloud can also count. But when I assign it here for your homework, I want you to read it yourself silently and then keep a reading journal of what you've read. Okay, today your assignment is to take your quiz for history on Teams and your quiz for science on Teams. So what we've been working on this week in your homework earlier in the week is to prepare you for those quizzes. If you want to take a look before you open up your quiz and do a little bit of studying For history, we did the Chapter 9 review together yesterday, and you can take a look at those and review some of that information about the Revolutionary War, about how what came before the Revolutionary War was the French and Indian War, right? And how the colonists were broken up into two groups, right? There were the loyalists who thought people should stay loyal to the king of England, Great Britain, or there were the patriots who thought that the colonists should fight for their independence and be their own independent nation. Okay, when we did the Chapter 9 review, we talked about how the Declaration of Independence was signed on July 4th, 1776. It's when the colonists declared their intent to form a new nation of their own, and they wanted to be independent of Great Britain. We talked about how the colonists chose George Washington to be the leader of their army, and about some of the battles that happened because of that. We talked about the colonists protesting the different taxes, especially the tea tax. It made them feel angry, and as a protest, they dumped the tea into the Boston Harbor to say, we don't think that's fair and we don't want to pay that tax, okay? So you can take a look at your Chapter 9 review to remind yourself of some of the things we've been learning, just things especially that we've learned in the whole chapter. Once it's time to take your quiz, you need to put your book and your review and all of that away so that you're only using your mind for your quiz on Teams, okay? We've also been finishing up How the Body Works, Science Chapter 12. So it's all about the body systems. And you did a chapter summary this week where you used your glossary to find the definition of all those important words and how the different body systems that we've learned, right? The body systems, like skeletal system, where our bones all work together to support our body, to help us move, and to protect soft organs inside, right? We learned about the digestive system and how that helps break down the food that comes into nutrients our bodies can use, and the circulatory system. So you can look at your summary to review some of those things we've been learning about if you'd like to just make sure you have it all in your mind. And then once it's time to take your quiz, I want you to put your book away. I want you to put your summary page away. All of that goes away because you're only using your mind to take your quiz. You want to really see if you've remembered these things. I think all of you I know enjoy science. I think you're all little scientists. You're always asking questions, you're curious, and you wonder. And this has been a great chapter for learning a lot of the things that we sometimes wonder why. I wonder why our body does it. Have you ever wondered? I wonder how big my heart is. And now you know your heart is a muscle that's the size of your fist, right? Have you ever wondered, where does your food go when you chew it? It begins the process of digesting as soon as you put it in your mouth. It's the first step of digestion, right? And then it goes all the way down into that bag of muscle that is your stomach, where it continues the process of digestion. The way our bodies are made and designed is amazing. God made us, right? And He made all the different systems work together to do what our bodies need to do. So I've really enjoyed learning about that with you. I know you guys have enjoyed it too. And I want you to do your best work. Get both of these quizzes done today and turned in. In English, we're learning about sentences, sentence parts, what makes a sentence. We've been learning about how we can combine if we want our subject could have more than one part. We could combine it with an and. Our predicate, our action part, we could combine and have more than one part. Today we're going to talk about a common mistake that happens in sentences called run-on sentences. I like the title of it, or what it's called. It just sounds like exactly what it is. Like you start a sentence and then you just get going and it goes on too long, and it really needs to be more than one sentence, okay? Let's look at this one. I wrote us a sentence here to look at. Let's take a look at it together. I love summer, my kids like to swim. I love summer, my kids like to swim. Okay, this is a run-on sentence. Okay, we're going to look at it and see what can we see that makes it a run-on sentence. Sometimes sentences should be written separately that are joined, and this one isn't even joined well. There's no and, there's no conjunction to join it. It's just runs on and would be better as two sentences. Okay? When it's a run-on sentence, you'll notice there's a subject and a predicate 2 times. Okay, so we'll divide it, we'll separate those out. Let's look at it and let's find the subjects and the predicates and realize this is 2 separate sentences and it should be written as 2 separate sentences, okay? I love summer, my kids like to swim. I see a subject right away. I. Okay, that's the subject here, at least right here. And what we need to find the predicate, that's the action part. What the subject is doing or what the subject is. Well, what is the subject? I love. Okay, so right here we have a subject and a predicate right there. And that gives us our first clue, okay? I love summer. Oops. And we have right there a sentence. We can put an end mark and we're done. That's a sentence. And so what do we find over here? My kids like to swim. This is a whole nother sentence. There's a subject there. Do you see it? Do you see the subject of the sentence? Who or what is that sentence about? It's about my kids. And what do my kids do? Or what are they? They like to swim. So right here we have another subject and predicate. Okay, so let's write it as its own separate sentence. We want to remember to make this capitalized. My kids like to swim. So I love summer, my kids like to swim is a run-on sentence that should be 2 separate sentences. I love summer, my kids like to swim. Okay? On your worksheet, you're going to do this. You're going to read some sentences and you're going to realize, oh, would be better as 2 separate sentences. So you're going to find the predicate parts. You're going to find the subject parts and you're going to divide it out into 2 separate sentences the way we did with my sentence, okay? And you can, then they'll give you different options where you just get to fill in the bubble on what's the best way to separate these sentences. Here's one example. Number 3 says, the people love God, they sing to God. And that's written as 1 complete sentence. Now, would we want to say the people, period? Love God, they sing to God, period. No, because just saying love God, period, right there makes it a fragment. It's not a full sentence. We would want to say the people love God, period. They sing to God, period. Okay? The people is a subject and they is a subject. And then we have their predicates. All right? So it's fun that we've been learning about subjects and predicates. Subject is who or what the sentence is about. And the predicate is the important part is either a linking verb or an action part. It's telling us what the subject is, what the subject does. Okay? So because we've been playing with taking the sentences apart and seeing what they are, this should be something you can apply to looking at a run-on sentence and dividing it out into subjects and predicates and making separate complete sentences instead of sentences that run on and on. Okay? Here's one. The dog chased the goat. She ran into the barn. We can write it. The dog chased the goat. She ran into the barn. Okay, so that's a run-on sentence. If we find the predicate parts, and we realize there's 2 predicate parts, this will help us know where the 2 sentences are. Let's circle the predicate parts. The dog chased the goat, she ran into the barn. Remember that important part of a predicate is the action verb or the linking verb. So let's find those. Let's start with that. I see chased and I see ran. So let's circle this. Chased the goat and ran into the barn. Those are your predicate parts. So now we also want to find the subject parts. Who chased? The dog. So here's our subject. And who ran? She ran. Now you realize you have 2 sentences. The dog chased the goat, period. She ran into the barn, period. And you just need to rewrite it with capitals in the right place and end marks in the right place. So that's the work you're going to do on your worksheet, page 291 and 292.